Moving forward in our journey through Revelation, we reach verse 2 of chapter 15, which states, "And I saw something like a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who have the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, having harps of God." This verse introduces a scene of profound triumph and celebration, offering a vivid contrast to the ominous depiction of judgment described previously with the 7 last plagues. The sea of glass, mingled with fire, presents a striking and powerful image. The sea of glass is mentioned earlier in Revelation, where it symbolizes the barrier or separation between God and humanity, reflecting the purity and holiness of God's dwelling place. The addition of fire to this scene likely represents God's purifying presence and his judgment. Fire throughout Scripture often signifies purification and the divine nature of God's justice, which refines and consumes impurity. Those standing on the sea of glass are described as having achieved victory over the beast, his image, and his mark. These individuals symbolize the faithful believers who have endured persecution and have not succumbed to the pressures of conforming to the demands of evil forces depicted by the beast. The beast, a central figure in the apocalyptic scenarios of Revelation, typically represents anti-God powers and authorities that demand allegiance in ways that are contrary to God's commands. Victory over the beast and its symbols thus signifies a profound spiritual triumph, faithfulness to God despite the direst adversities. The mention of harps also enriches this scene. In the biblical context, harps are often associated with worship and praise. The imagery of these victorious ones holding harps suggests that their response to deliverance and triumph is not one of boastful pride, but of humble and heartfelt worship directed towards God. This reflects a central theme of Revelation. The ultimate purpose of God's acts, whether judgmental or salvific, is to bring about recognition of his sovereignty and to elicit worship from his creation. This scene serves multiple purposes. Firstly, it reassures believers of the worth of enduring faithfulness. The promise of victory over oppressive evil is a profound encouragement to remain steadfast in one's faith. Secondly, it provides a glimpse into the worshipful response appropriate for those who have been delivered by God's hand. The image of the sea of glass, mingled with fire, and the victorious ones playing harps illustrates a future reality where believers are not just safe from harm, but are active participants in divine worship. Furthermore, the notion of standing on the sea of glass can be interpreted as signifying a position of security and peace. Despite the chaos symbolized by the fire, the believers remain unharmed, suggesting that God's presence not only purifies, but also protects. This duality of protection and purification is a comfort to believers, affirming that their endurance is not in vain and that they are safeguarded by God's power. For contemporary readers, this vision is a compelling reminder of the spiritual warfare that believers are engaged in. The forces of evil in the world often manifest in pressures to abandon or compromise one's faith, whether through direct persecution or more subtle societal pressures. The assurance of victory over such forces as given in Revelation 15, 2 encourages believers to persevere, holding fast to their faith with the promise of divine reward. Moreover, the context in which this victory takes place, a celestial realm depicted by the sea of glass, highlights the transcendent nature of Christian hope. Believers are not merely working for earthly success or temporary reprieve, but are participating in a cosmic struggle whose outcome has eternal significance. The celestial imagery underscores the vastness of God's dominion and the scope of his redemptive plan, which far exceeds the immediate circumstances of earthly life. Verse 2 paints a vivid picture of triumph and worship in the midst of divine judgment. It invites believers to view their struggles through the lens of God's overarching plan for redemption and justice. It calls them to faithful endurance, promising that their faithfulness will be rewarded not just with victory over spiritual foes, but with an eternal role in the divine worship of God, who is both just and the deliverer of his people. Thus, the passage not only provides hope and encouragement, but also frames the believer's earthly struggles within the larger narrative of God's ultimate victory and the restoration of all things under his rule.